Welcome, Adam and Bailey, to Inside the 90, which
Welcome. Thanks for having us.
Thank you. This is a podcast where we get together and talk about what it's looked like for y'all to go from pains and strains to gains by adopting the idea of living in a 90-day world. So for context, Adam Landrum, Bailey Boese, formerly of Up&Up, now GMB, but we actually all worked together for a season as well. So good friends, kind of feels like the band's getting back together here.
Very cool. I would like to not relive the pains if I don't have
yes,
to.
Yes, exactly.
But I imagine some of that's going to come up.
Yeah. So, and Bailey's joining us from where today?
Clarkson, Michigan.
Nice.
It's a little chilly, but beautiful.
You got your earmuffs on.
I got my earmuffs on.
So, all right, cool. Well, I'm going to just kick it off with a question to Adam. Adam, tell us, where did your EOS journey begin?
Yeah. Well, I owned Up&Up for 22 years, so sold it in 2023. So 2017, I'm guessing this 2017 was the time I felt like we were hitting the ceiling, or I was hitting the ceiling, and I was like, something's got to change. And so I think it's the first line in traction. I think it is like, if you feel like you're hitting the ceiling, I'm like, this is my book. Yes. Oh my goodness, they read my mind. So they, like hook, line, and sinker right out of the gate.
So cool. And then what did that look like, Bailey? Where were you introduced to EOS?
I'm sure there was a lot behind the scenes before it got rolled on to me. Adam, yes, no, shaking his head. But really kind of rolling out some rocks and things like that were the first things that really felt like they hit first. But I was kind of at the effect of at the beginning and then taking it in full stride and moving with it there.
So what was your role at Up&Up at the time that happened, if you remember?
I've had just about 50 roles there. So Adam, maybe help me out. I might have been in the graphic design role. I think I'd probably shifted into more of the UX design and started leading some of those web projects at that point. So stepping a little bit more into a project leadership role, but I might have started a little bit earlier in my time there.
Well, Adam, you said it started with hitting the ceiling. Like, what was the ceiling for you?
Oh, what was the ceiling at the time? Probably, people in revenue was the ceiling, and just not having, just didn't feel like we had momentum. And so I guess it was like more of a feeling of like, we're just not making the progress that I thought we should be making.
And then what it looked like for, obviously you said you were hook, line, and sinker, but like, all right, so what happened?
Yeah, well, I mean, so I guess I should rewind and say, I started the business day one saying, I want this to be a self-managed business. I did not want it to depend on me. I didn't want to be the founder superhero, and that was very evident. I would never be that. But, and so EOS is really that answer to the business could self-manage itself because it was the operating system. So, I mean, I knew that's what I wanted. I had no idea how to get there. And then EOS, I don't even know when EOS came out. When did EOS come out? Do you know? Anybody? Any Bueller?
I need to know that.
Yeah.
I think in the
well,
90s.
It wasn't, I didn't feel like it was too long afterwards, but so EOS was that answer I was looking for.
And then what did, describe the team at that point in time, and how did you approach it with your team? Did you have a leadership team? Like, what'd that look like?
Yeah, 2017. Yeah, we had a leadership team. There were 4 of us on the team. I read Traction, of course, as any good founder would do. Then I gave everybody else on the leadership team the book and said, hey, read this. This is great. I probably heard about it at like some conference and came back and made everybody read it, right? But yeah, so we read it and we were like, hey, this sounds like a good idea. We should probably implement this. And so we started the process of self-implementation.
So y'all did self-implement first?
Yeah, I mean, pretty easy, right? It's pretty,
Read the book?
It's not that hard. I read the book.
Read what the heck is EOS?
Yeah, read what, yeah. Well, that was later that we had all the employees read what the heck is EOS. Yeah. But the concepts they're simple. Like it's not rocket science. And so I was like, yeah, this, we can self-implement. This will be pretty easy.
So Bailey, what was that like? Was it easy?
Yeah, I think I had compared the book to watching like old school training videos of this is what the right things to do in the workplace, because it would give kind of those scenarios. So I think it's explained really simply. It's put out there in that way. I think putting it into practice took a little bit more time, but gathering that information and kind of getting that kickoff was quick and easy.
So, Adam, you said you hope to not open up the wounds of pains, but let's talk about some. Like, what were some of those early pains?
Yeah, so we found out it wasn't as easy as it looked and simple as hard as it often is the case. And so, is a little bit of 2 steps forward, 1 step back. Let me try and think about what particular thing. Oh, I know, like the accountability chart. So, where we're mapping out every role in the agency, whether it was our current state or a future state. I mean, that was super challenging. And then doing the roles and the functions per role, or if I have that vice versa. But the five functions per role. I mean, oh my gosh, trying to nail those down. It seems, I mean, we're like 12 people or something, so it doesn't seem like it's that hard. It seemed insurmountable at the time.
Well, context on that, but a 12-person multidisciplinary marketing firm, right?
Yeah.
So 12
Right.
different job descriptions for 12 different people too.
Yes, I'm a glutton for punishment.
Yeah.
Having an agency, yes, it's a complex thing to do.
Yeah. What so during that journey, when did you start to feel like, all right, we're getting a little bit of traction. You're starting to see that there's some gains happening.
Well, the VTO is a powerful thing. They say it's 1 page, it's really 2 pages, but really starting to get down. It took us about 3 years, probably not. I can't even say with a straight face that we nailed it down, but even getting the first draft going was huge. Like, we just started talking about important things. Even if we didn't have total clarity or didn't all agree on it, at least it got us talking about it in a direction that was good.
And Bailey, from your side, do you remember the early days of actually hearing vision and the language and VTO and all that? And what was your response?
Yeah, I would agree. Kind of like even thinking back to roles and functions, I still get them confused. I'm like, roles have functions or functions have roles? But I think getting that and truly understanding the difference between the different of those, it took a while. Still to this day, making sure I'm staying refreshed on those things too.
Well, did that? I guess what clarity were you looking for? Why was the accountability chart hard, and why was that one of the things you were really focused on?
It's probably, at the time, we had, a little bit about Up&Up. We niched down to higher ed as our industry that we did brand and marketing for. So, but we were just a year or 2 into that. And so we didn't know what we were doing. Most likely. I won't totally admit that, but yes, we didn't know we didn't know what we were doing. So we were
the visionary, right?
Yeah, right. And people joke I'm an accountant who was running a agency. So there's a little bit of that of like, okay, we're trying to figure out A, how to run an agency, and B, how to do this new industry. So we really needed EOS to help us out. So that was a big challenge.
What? So tell me about that full journey now, from when you started your self-implementing. I mean, y'all went through formal, and then you've kind of hit all the maturity cycles of going through EOS. I kind of hit that at a high level.
Yeah, we could be the unofficial poster child for how not to do it and how to do it.
Yes.
So we started. Typical. I bet how a lot of people start. They read the book, they get excited, they say, "Hey, I can do this." We did that. We did not get the traction that the book promised. And so then we said, okay, let's step back. Let's get an official implementer to come in, show us how it's done. And of course, you get the free little 90-day or 90-minute.
90-minute meeting.
Yeah, 90-minute meeting. And there you go. And so Charlie White out of Asheville came down to us in Greenville, South Carolina, and it was just clear. It was clear he knew what he was doing, and I was like, okay, this sounds like a plan. So we hired him, and our whole plan was let's have him do it. And actually, in speaking with him, let's have him do it for 2 years. And he said, hey, once you guys sort of do it with me for 2 years, most people are comfortable taking it on themselves and doing it. And that's exactly what we did. We sort of did have an integrator, but she left, and then I hired yours truly to come in.
That's
Jami.
scary for all of us.
Yes, it was scary. But Jami came in, and what was really cool about what you did is that you quickly, you like just picked it up like that and started running with it. And for those who don't know, Jami is a master at understanding concepts, and Bailey actually is very good at this too, understanding concepts and communicating concepts, and much stronger than I am at that. And so that was a much needed or a missing thing that we had. So you were able to explain it to the team better than I was able to. So that was super helpful as well. So you and I, we started to implement. I was visionary. You're integrator, of course. And then Jami decided he had a midlife crisis, and he decided to start his own thing.
Oh, we jumped to that now.
Yeah. Well, we can talk about mine later if you want.
Yeah. His pain, your pain.
Yeah. And what are you doing now? Oh, you're helping people with midlife crisis.
Yeah, that's right. And Bailey, don't worry. You got about 10 years. You'll be a little longer, maybe. You'll be with us.
Young,
give me at least
young
15.
and spry.
Yeah. So Jami went off and did his own thing. So then I was sort of stuck back doing both, which was fine. And we did it until we got bought in late 2023. So,
but you did some training, right? After I left, what did that look like?
Oh yeah, it's actually before you left, because if I remember correctly, I'd run the quarterly offsites.
Mm-hmm.
You're actually right. Yeah, you started doing the last two, I think.
Okay.
Yeah.
So at the time, I don't think they still have it, but they had EOS had like a boot camp that you could do.
Yeah.
And I subscribed to that, and I basically did all the training, or at least what I understand. I could be wrong, but I did all the training that integrators typically do, but it's video, right? It wasn't in person or anything. And then I had all the resources, and I had the little guide that Charlie would page through when we would meet. Yeah, the workbook. So, but what that did is it just said, hey, here's how you run a quarterly. Here are the things you need.
Yeah.
And a really cool thing too that we did is we use. You could use the software. What's the software called? 90.
90.
Okay. And but we configured our project management ClickUp to run our L10s and to run our offsites. You could do Monday.com, of course, whatever you use, or 90. But I think we really automated it quite well, which was helpful too.
Yeah. Well, during that, so that's your visionary rolling out leadership team going through that. Bailey, you went through 4 or 5 years, right, of EOS. So from your side, like, when did you feel like things started to click? Like, y'all were getting traction outside of the leadership team, and things were starting to gel.
I think when people could actually give back what some of those things in the BTO were without having it in front of them, that felt like traction. And then I think what I was talking about with rocks, actually having some of those things, being able to move forward and really getting things done. When you have all these like big ideas and no time to do it, having that time to actually say, hey, you've got time to put towards rocks, then just do it. So that was great. I think another point was later on when we, like Adam was saying, when we have a lot of different people wearing a lot of different hats, trying to change and shift how the accountability happens. We reworked a lot of roles actually to atypical roles, something that you wouldn't see maybe in another agency, because we were already wearing the hats, to combine those down and make that into something that makes the most sense for traction and getting things, actual work through the deadlines.
And so since that's happened, it's been several years now, right? How has that accountability chart evolved, and what does that look like now from where you are, and how that's managed?
it was given to people individually a little bit more to figure out, and then worked with some of the leadership team, I think. So one of those changes was actually shifting away from having completely separate account managers and completely separate project managers, and having someone who's working and knows the projects. For me, for web, knows everything about them, can do it with their eyes closed, can kind of lead it that way, and step more into something that I wasn't fully comfortable with, of going client facing as much, and giving that to say, hey, here are your roles and functions that makes sense for that type of work. And it made work flow quickly, easier. And then we were able to plug in support where it made sense, instead of following a traditional role of what maybe you would see at an agency that has 40, 50 people. And we had 10 people still doing the jobs of 40, 50 people.
Yeah, I think it was pretty cool because it went, yeah, a bigger firm is typically going to be more rigid, and it allowed us to be much more fluid. And like you said, we had 12 people with 12 different or 14 different disciplines, right?
Yeah.
And so if you lose one person, one discipline, like somebody's got to take that on. And so our roles were sort of constantly shifting. So the accountability chart and the individual roles help us be more reactive and more fluid when we needed to be.
And Bailey, what was it like? As you said, you were kind of pushed out of your comfort zone, but you're now given like, hey, you're accountable for this. So what was it like to receive that? And then how did you work through that?
Poorly at times. I think it pushed me, it stretched me. I think it got me further to where, like, further along than I would have been in a typical role. It gave me a lot more exposure. It made me understand the agency as a whole a lot better. So it was uncomfortable at first, but now I think I feel more comfortable and more confident overall. Even if I shift back out of some of those roles, I feel more understanding of like the whole picture, which I think is really helpful.
Very cool. Well, all right, let's talk about the 20 tools, right? And what, for each of you, like what's one of the tools that you felt like just you really jived with and you're passionate about?
I got scared there for a second because I was like, wait, there's 20 tools. And then I was like, oh my gosh, can I name even one of them? But I'm going to go, I think the 555 is one of the best tools. I mean, I love it. It's a conversation. You sit down, you talk about, I don't know why it's called 5 for the rocks, because you don't have 5 rocks, but whatever. You talk about your rock, you talk about your functions, right? And you talk about what's the other 5? Your
core values.
The core values, and just, hey, how are you doing on these things?
Yeah.
I don't know. I found that very effective, and people could take ownership and responsibility and where they were, and there was sort of like there's like no judgment. It's just sort of like, hey, this is where you are, and the biggest thing that provided me is realizing, you can tell from what Bailey is saying, is that like we would just have way too many functions per role, and so we like would hire people because we'd realize, oh my gosh, this person's doing way too much. So it really helped us right size. And so anyway, I love that tool. I have another tool I love, but I'll save that for later.
We'll ping pong back.
Yeah.
Bailey, what about you?
I've hammered in rocks, I feel like, a lot. I have big ideas and I didn't have time to do them. And that gave me the time to do them and get the projects into a better spot as well, because that was kind of laying the foundation for some of those. That, and then I think the GWC was always really helpful because it outlined some things that's like, I don't know if I want that, but I definitely get it and I have capacity to do it. And then it can build some of that. And then the other side is like, hey, I don't have any capacity to do this, or I don't get this at all. And can bring clarity to both my role and like people on my team's role. I still use that often to talk through people in different tasks that might come up or roles that are available. So I've enjoyed GWC. It's an easy, quick tool to understand that side of it.
Yeah, I'll actually add, that's one of my favorites too, because so many people struggle with job descriptions and how do I give a review and how do I evaluate whether it's quantitative or qualitative, like, whether this person's doing a job really well. And I've found that, you just have those conversations, right? And I've found actually, and found this at Up&Up, like the first time you roll that out, it's scary. So what we did, I think, remember, is we actually had employees or managers work with employees, and employees answer it for themselves first.
Correct.
And the very first time, you're more harsh on yourself than your manager intends to be harsh on you.
Almost always.
Yeah.
Right.
And then from that point, it's like, all right, cool. Now we've established, what you get, what you won't have capacity to do. And you've got a really good conversation and say, all right, let's work on this as we move forward.
Yeah. That was my other one. Is our L10s a 20 tool?
Yeah.
Okay. So, the L10's got to be at the top. If you run them right and you run them effectively, they're awesome. You solve one or two problems every single week if you're meeting weekly, which you're supposed to be. And if you have five different departments meeting and doing it, you're solving 10 issues a week if you're doing the IDS correctly.
Yeah.
So, solve it once, solve it for all time. So anyway, the L10 and what I also love about it is that it gets the team into the business, right? A lot of people usually sort of like, I don't want whatever. I'm just a designer. I just want to do. No, like everyone, come on. We're all in the same. We're all trying to make this a great place and do a great job. And so I love that from a teamwork standpoint. It puts everyone on the same page again. So the L10s are fabulous.
What let's go to vision. So what point through the process did you feel like, all right, I'm now getting clarity for what my vision of this organization, what I want it to be? And then we'll ping to Bailey and talk about like once, what that was like as an employee to kind of rally behind that.
Yeah, I think 2027 is when I think I'm going to have I'm going to arrive to my vision. I felt like it was, it got clear, and what we found out is when we made it simpler, it got clearer. So what's the saying? Clarity is simplicity divided by 2. And so just making it more and more simple. So we were fortunate in that we niched, I believe, I'm pretty sure before we started doing EOS. So we'd already niched. That brings you a ton of clarity. But we went through so many renditions, and if I were to look back, so many renditions of our vision, if I were to look back, I think it was all the same essence. It was just 7 years of wordsmithing.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And
that's what you get for being a marketing agency.
Yes.
it's the wording.
Everyone's a writer too.
Yeah, because and the Up&Up stood for uplifting brands that uplift people, right? And so really that was the essence. That's the vision. We just want to work with brands and uplift them so they can uplift people and their clients. And we actually wanted to uplift our teammates. And that's what that's what we were all about.
Yeah.
That's really the vision, the mission, the purpose. That was all right there.
And I'm going to say this as a compliment to Adam because it was Adam's vision. It was uplifting brands that uplift people. But as a marketing agency, it was uplifting brands that uplift others. And he kept coming back to, nope, it is people. Right. But the alliteration sounds better.
Yes. Here you're seeing the inside of the madness.
But no, so Bailey, like when that vision started to manifest, what was that like for you?
I think having some of those things written down and kind of, like Adam said, being owned by the whole organization, it creates some bit of like power and pride and wanting to make sure that you're living up to that vision. I think like he said, it changed a lot, but it was always the same. So I think when that was presented back to us each quarter and saying, this is the vision, this is our purpose, it rebuilt some of that traction. It rebuilt some of the morale around the company and kind of re-amplified some of that work.
And so that brings a good topic up, clarity and cadence, right? So, you got the 90-day world, but then you've got the cultural side of how do you what does your cadence become? And I think that's something you did really well. Talk about how you looked at cadence and how often you got message in front of people and how all that worked, how you rolled this out.
Man, it's only been a year, and I'm starting to. I'm like, what was it? Well, I mean, I know we did monthly. We do monthly VTO reviews, and then we would do. Bailey, help me out. We do Friday. When we do Friday, we do Friday shares, where each department would share. Yeah. So
Friday shares.
and then of course
I was there.
Weekly L10s for the leadership team. So that was. That definitely was a constant cadence. We fluctuated with, do departments meet every week? Do they meet, every other week? That type of thing. That we experimented with that. But then there'd almost always be a quarterly. There definitely would be a quarterly update because we had profit sharing, so we would talk about and certainly our rocks. So we have rock updates. Each department at our monthly would. We'd have wins, and they would talk about where they are with their rocks and stuff. So there's a ton of communication going on around all the EOS concepts.
And the Friday share. So that was something I felt like was unique. It was there when I got there.
Mm-hmm.
But Bailey, talk about that and how that worked and what you saw and the benefit to the team.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I know it evolved a lot, but we had departments share both what they were working on, what they had learned. People share individual things so we could connect as a team as well and at the individual level. But it was just a point to sit down and learn, whether that was something more about the individual or about kind of the culture that we're in the business itself. So I think it was an interesting point, both for the people all coming together to hear, and it gave opportunity to people who typically aren't in that role to present or talk or be more extroverted to be able to share something that was interesting to them, and give them a point of voice as well.
Yeah, and I think from memory there, it was 30 minutes stand up, 15 minutes was a VTO. So someone on the leadership team was walking through something on the VTO.
Yep.
Whether that was core values or proven process, and then it was 15 minutes of an individual in the company, and it was scheduled, so there's a calendar, so you knew when you were coming up, sharing something that was just important to them. So it could be a rock they were working on, it could be something personal, but I thought that was cool culturally because it brought everybody together.
Yeah.
And it also looking back, like a challenge is you get a well-oiled team, right, and then you hire someone.
Yeah.
And it's like, all right, well, you've heard this 700 times, and now this new employee's coming in. They need to hear it, to retain it too. But that became a really good cadence, I think, where people quickly got in the groove of being like, okay, there's a cultural rhythm to this.
Yeah, and I don't know if it was developed there, but when we did hire new employees, we'd have them read what the heck is EOS, and then we actually we're using Pathright to do. They would take a course, and just to make sure that they got the concepts, we would have an onboarding thing with them. So there's a lot invested in making sure people were up to speed. And then I just wanted to note too, the leadership team owned the shares on Friday because I felt like as the quote unquote CEO, I felt like I was talking about EOS all the time, and I'm like, people have to get sick of hearing me talk about this. And so I wanted more of the team to share the burden, if you will, and so the leadership team did an awesome job, and that made us cohesive, right? The rest of the team could see like, oh, they're all sort of drinking the Kool-Aid. Yeah. So I thought that was something smart that we did.
Yeah, and it was natural. It didn't seem forced, and
right.
Yeah, everybody was bought into it.
It wasn't like it was rehearsed. It felt like it was being owned by more than just the CEO coming down and telling you this is how it's doing. It was owned by those people that were, and I'm going to use quotes, on the leadership team because I'm working directly with them on the day-to-day. I'm working directly with Adam on the day-to-day as well. So it was not like that level of separation that you sometimes see as well. And having them kind of come with that ownership of, hey, this is what I believe in as well, and this is how the company should run from my perspective too. It made it easier for someone that was just starting or someone who wasn't on the leadership team but had been there for a while to also like take that on and own that as well.
Yep.
And so on the 20 tools thing, I have a favorite tool. I think y'all probably know what my favorite tool is.
Well, I can't remember them. So
it's Kolbe. Right?
Oh yeah. See, I would have totally failed Kolbe as a tool.
But
I wouldn't have connected those two either.
Well,
that was an eye-opening moment for Jami and I.
Exactly. That's why it's one of my favorite tools. It's mine and Bailey's story. Like we went from crying to hugging.
I understand you. You get me.
So from memory, I think Bailey, you're a 2 quick start, and I'm a 7.
No, I'm a. Oh no, you might be right.
Yeah. So I think it was really because Bailey and I, we think a lot in some of the big picture ways, and like, and trying to simplify things. And we have a lot that we share in common. But, I'm a high quick start and she's a low quick start. So she wants to stabilize and I want to change things all the time. And we had some knockdown dragouts until we had a Kolbe consultant come in and walk us through it. And I remember Bailey's the one that lit up and she was like, I get you now.
It made sense. I was like, why? We're thinking similarly. I was like, why are we having this tension? Why is this going on? And it was like, the further you are, the more tension. And I was like, it makes sense.
Well, and the main thing there really was that, like, you give me any problem and there's options. And you give Bailey a problem, she's like, there's already an answer. And I'm like, but that answer doesn't apply to this. We've got new options. And we just went, back and forth all the time.
Yeah. So, I'm pretty mid on the Kolbe. And so Jami's pretty volatile. And and I didn't understand why a lot of people were having troubles with it. I mean, we had one employee threaten to kill him. So
stab me. I don't remember exactly the context of the
bodily
situation.
Harm was definitely threatened, but no, that was eye opening. I think the team really learned a lot from Kolbe, and we implemented that into what we call Buffalo Battles, which is another discussion. But it was our development of our team and people wanting them to be their best version, and so EOS even played a role into that, which was cool.
Yeah. And so the topic hasn't come up yet, but core values. I mean, when I think about Landrum EOS, I'm thinking core values.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, you have to have core values. I mean, if you don't have core values, I don't know what you're doing.
So what is that? Explain, like, how did core values come into play as you were rolling EOS out?
Yeah, it provided some clarity. I remember we had core values at one point, and we had like 15 of them. Bailey, I don't know if you remember that. That was back in the day. You were probably an intern then. Or you might have been. Yep.
Probably.
Yep. So, we really we simplified it and got it down to 4 and just much more meaningful. I think, I say brand is the soul of an organization, and the core values are just foundational to that. And it's who you are, it's who you hire, it's who you fire. You reward that behavior, you reward that. So, I mean, for us, the core values just drove everything we did.
And then Bailey, from your side, what was it like to see that rolled out, and how was it received?
I think pretty well. I don't know if I was there in front of the 15, but once I got narrowed down, I think giving clarity and kind of backing up some of those higher level ideas was good to do. And again, coming from a marketing agency where we're creating these values and purposes for schools, it was cool to have that and own that for ourselves as well.
Yeah, and so going back to the 555, right? That was a big part of the discussion. We probably spent more time on the values than anything else in the 555. But how about this for the listeners? They might, let me, can I share our values?
Yeah, please.
Real quick. So I'm going to look at Bailey to see if she wants to remember. So radically responsible. That comes from a book called The 15 Commitments of Conscious Leadership, which we had another one from that too, was a win for all. Now I'm missing number 2.
Purposely excellent.
Thank you. Purposely excellent. So if something's worth doing, do it well. And then last was sort of an overarching core value was make it happen. So we had, that was the value that ruled all values is like, just make it happen, like figure it out, like be scrappy, be resourceful. So that was sort of our DNA. And it was really fun to be on a team where you could count on your teammates that you knew they were going to figure it out when an issue arose. And especially when they're radically responsible, they're going to do what they're supposed to do. And so you didn't have to micromanage. Yeah. And it was wonderful. And it gave them a lot of autonomy. At least that was the intent. And it was cool. So core values were crucial.
Yeah, and I think
go ahead,
Bailey.
Well, we had implemented, I don't know if weekly reviews and like catch-ups with your manager were part of it, but for part of EOS, but we would implement those core values into some things, either whether they were high fives or cheers or just appreciating our teammates, that if during that week or during that review time or just throughout the week, we could say, hey, thanks, Adam, for doing X, Y, and Z, and then throw a tag of radically responsible or win for all on that, because that was part of the culture and it was in the everyday. So that was cool to have that be something that people really bought into and were able to implement in the appreciations and in the everyday and the recognition.
And I think for me, being within the organization, being a leader in the organization, managing people in the organization, what those four core values did really well was there was tension within them, right? So I'm wired for purpose. I want to do great work, right? Purposefully excellent is something that I'm wired to do. Radical responsibility, on the other hand, like sometimes like, hey, you know what? Yeah, I'm late for 10 meetings. I was on time for the other 90. Like, I'm doing pretty well here. And it was like, no, that doesn't cut it.
It's not right.
So really, and that was just common language, and you knew that you were letting people down if you were late, if you weren't on time, if you didn't do what you said you were going to do, and so, and part of that too, where there were many nights and weekends when Bailey and I were looking at each other at work going, why are we both here? Oh, because we have things that we told people we had to get done.
Yeah, for better or for worse. Maybe, in hindsight, we could have backed off of radically responsible and just been sort of responsible. It just doesn't sound as good.
Well, but let's jump to the end and also bring some context to current day, right?
Yeah.
So we were talking about Up&Up, which is when I was there. I left 3 years ago, right? So since then, you've sold the company. You're all part of a bigger company now. So give a little context to that.
Yeah, we're part of a fantastic company bought us called GMB. They're actually out of Grand Rapids, Michigan. And they are running a version of EOS themselves. So that was one of the things that I think attracted both of us, to be honest. And they're doing we are over 200 people, I should say. Both Bailey and I still work for them. And so they're doing their own flavor of EOS. It's not, I would say we were pretty purist in how we did it. They're not so much, but it makes sense on how they're organized. So we still have L10s. They're a little looser. They do an accountability chart different. They do it's almost like a holacracy. They use peerdom, and it's a team of teams, so it's super organic. So it's a little bit like what we were leaning towards already, and they're doing it, and they're doing really well. So it's really neat to see how they've almost have blended EOS and holacracy. If people don't know holacracy, my best explanation would be it's like It's organic self-governing. There's no hierarchy. There's no. It's just
anarchy.
More, it's not. It's not quite anarchy, but it's very organic. So it's very different. Very neat what they're doing.
Very
so
cool.
Yeah.
And then Bailey, from your perspective, being a part of a smaller team that was growing, that rolled out of EOS, now being part of a larger organization, if you were going to give advice back to a smaller or growing team about some of the key parts that you think EOS are most important, what would those be?
I think owning it and really like making sure it's authentic to you. I think you can go through and make this is a business purpose and this is what our vision is. It's not attainable. Like, so I think having true, authentic values there and purposes that really speak to what you're trying to do makes it so much easier for the team to grab onto and own as well.
Cool. Well, parting thoughts. Yeah. What?
One thing I was just thinking about over here is that some people may be curious of like, how did EOS help you sell, or how where did that play into it? And I think anyone who starts a business hopes one day that they can sell it, and certainly that was my intent. And so to answer that question is, I absolutely think it helped. There's an adage that says, the best way to sell a business is to run it like you're gonna sell it tomorrow, right? Because you get your expenses down, you're disciplined, you make
always be ready.
You're always ready, and so EOS sort of starts getting you prepared. It also puts in an operating system that a lot of small businesses in particular don't sell, is because it's dependent on the founder. And so, someone's not going to buy it because when the founder goes away, the business goes away. So that is also a signal to buyers, is be like, no, we have the whole team is this. It's just not me. But it helped us get consistent numbers going for sure, and it just put an operating system in our company. So we had 3 different companies who were interested in buying us at the time, and only one of them was EOS, and that wasn't a criteria on my list, and I don't necessarily think it was a criteria on their list either. But I think it's not coincidence that that's an EOS company bought an EOS company, right? At the end, like, we got them, they got us. There's so much unknown when you're getting bought anyway, so that was just like a known quantity. So I think that helps. So anyway, if anyone's considering it because you want to get things in order because one day you're looking to sell, I think it can only help you.
Yeah, it's a shared operating system, right? But you have common language, you have common expectations, and so you're running on a shared operating system. It just, it's much less murky, I would assume, for both sides.
Yeah, well, and and even if you don't sell it, makes your team better and
Correct.
should make your company better anyway. Yeah. So I'm very fortunate that I stumbled across the book. However I did, I don't remember, but and that we've invested a lot of money and time to do it, and it paid off. So it was good.
Awesome. Bailey, closing thoughts?
I think I would have thought that this was just a small business sort of tool, and whether that's just a good example of GMB and how they are running, it felt more seamless than I thought it would to go from the very small to this larger group because of the shared values that were already in place. So I think that was a great thing to have, going from 10, 12 people to 200. Have that sense of communication and that really like baseline already kind of figured out and kind of be in the know for that. So that was great.
Awesome. Well, this has been a great conversation. I appreciate both of you greatly. Bailey, it's good to see you.
Same.
And
good to see you again.
All right. Y'all have a great week.
Thanks for having us.
See you.